I'm Jeremy Rourke, and this is a country media election review with the two candidates for Clatsop County Sheriff. First, the incumbent.
Hi, I'm Tom Bergen, Clatsop County Sheriff.
Okay, and then you are the challenger from?
I'm Jim Pierce, currently with the Oregon State Police.
Okay, the first question is for you, Sheriff, and that would be about the jail. Tell us a little bit about your concerns right now about the jail. Last year there was a measure that went to the voters. They turned that down for expansion. What's happened since?
Well, we've currently we're turned down on the jail ballot, the measure for the expansion. And unfortunately, that was kind of sad because it was 8 cents a day, approximately $30 a year for an average household here in Clatsop County. Since then, we've actually had to release somebody that went out and murdered a person. And that occurred in the Portland area, and allegedly, I have to say, but he is the prime suspect. That was a great example of why this jail was so necessary. Currently, we have 60 beds, and we're still at 60, but the voters made their decision, and so we'll stick by it and do the best we can with what we have.
And so you're releasing prisoners early on a matrix, basically.
Right.
And so the concern also in the Seaside area, in the Cannon Beach and Gerhardt area, has been about the mentally ill prisoners that are at the jail. What's the concern that you have about that and what's being done there?
Well, that's my latest endeavor for the last year and a half, is working on the mentally ill people that are in the facility that don't need to be there. With the expansion, that was part of the concern, was we were going to be able to have more bed space or change the venue, so to speak, for mentally ill people so they're not in general population. But I'm also working on a different...
So when you bring a mentally ill patient in who's committed a crime, then the status is there's not enough room for them to be treated properly, correct?
Well, it's not that they can't be treated properly, it's just that's not the venue for it. And we try to segregate them and take care of their welfare and safety as best we can, but there's a full gamut of mental illness. And yes, some people with mental illness do need to be held accountable, but the majority of them don't need to be in that jail setting. And that's what we're working on, trying to come up with a facility and some different ideas to help with that concern.
So it's something that you would go back to voters with and say, here's a plan that we have and here's how much it will cost, or are you trying to work within the budget that you have?
The voters spoke, and that's what we're going to stick with. And maybe in a year or two we'll come up with something different and try to, represent it, and we'll go from there.
But right now,
the voters spoke, and that's what we'll stick with.
So you're working with what you've got.
We've got a matrix, and just recently we did a very large compound, heroin, methamphetamine bust, and unfortunately, out of those 25 individuals, about 19 of them are currently back out on the street.
And we want to talk more about that in just a second, but let me ask Jim about the mental illness situation. How would you handle a situation like that if you were the sheriff?
Well, I agree with Tom, with Sheriff Bergen, that we do have a problem with mental illness in this county. I believe that some of these individuals are being lodged inappropriately, if you can maybe say that. I think that a lot of that problem stems from the fact that some of these people that have mental illness don't have the capabilities of getting insurance, so they can't get medications to help them keep on level. And so there has to be some sort of help that we can give the mental health industry with that. I'm not quite sure what that would be. Everybody's looking for dollars to help finance their programs. That may be one arena that we need to look at, even though we know that funding is very, very shallow, even for our county. I know that mental illness. If we had control of the mental illness, we could probably have control of some of the crimes that are being committed out there. As Sheriff Bergen says, some of these people are committing crimes that really need to be held accountable for their actions, but we're not so sure that the jail facility is the place to do that. I know that mental health patients have a number of help options that they can have, but it's up to them whether they choose to have it once they've committed a crime. That maybe the industry has the ability to kind of get them into help, but until that point they don't have it. And so we need to do something. I'm not quite sure what it is, other than work with the mental health industry to try to figure out some ways that we can support the mental health problem and get them some more medication, get something going so that we can keep those individuals out of the jails,
Let
and
me-
maybe in a different setting.
Okay, very good, thank you. Let me ask you now, gentlemen, about the recent drug bust you talked about earlier. 23 people arrested, and especially
25.
Specifically 25 in the Seaside area. And you had told us when we talked about this story originally that the sales go on all the time, 24/7. You can see them in the parking lots of grocery stores up and down the coastline. How can that be stopped?
Well, it's like your yard. It continues to grow. And I've used this analogy numerous times. We continue to mow our yards, and that's what we have to do in our community. The weeds come up, we pull them, and we just continue on. It takes a combined resource. That's why the City of Seaside assists us. Oregon State Police used to help us, but they've been cut back on their funding. Astoria Police Department used to help us. And when I ran the narcotic unit, we actually had 6 people on the team, including U.S. Customs and so on. But
so you're continuing to see this problem, and they come through the to the jail. It's almost like a revolving door, as you mentioned.
Right.
They're out without spending a lot of time in jail or prison.
The main thing that you have to take into consideration when you do these large busts is that people need to be held accountable. And when you hold people accountable, when you have the correct jail space for your community, then recidivism drops, and that's exactly what would happen, as did in Tillamook County. People don't shoplift as often as they do because they know they're going to do 30 days or 90 days for a simple shoplift. Same thing with narcotic use. Instead of turning them out the next day, they have an opportunity to sit in jail for 6 months, and also that helps get them clean as well, and then on the road to recovery, which is a huge factor, not only incarceration but rehabilitation.
And that's one of the things that the leaders in Seaside that we've talked to about this problem say, that is that we need to help these people get off drugs and to become clean rather than to go to jail. Do you see that as an option?
Well, absolutely. I think that prevention is a big piece of the puzzle. Prevention that starts early on in the schools. And I've been doing for years, I've been doing programs through our school systems throughout the entire county and in other counties about talking about drug and alcohol issues.
So in other words, presentations with the kids?
Presentations with them, talking with them. But I think that the prevention needs to even go to a higher level. I think that if we can get information out to all of the citizens about what drugs do, how they affect people, and it's not that people don't know that. I just don't think we have a lot of advertisement about different types of drugs, what it'll do, how it acts and reacts with a person, how people can actually identify somebody with that. I think that those type of preventative services also could be applied to help maybe lower things. Maybe right off the bat it doesn't, but as people start seeing other people that are being impaired, they can start making calls. And when you have more eyes on something, you get less of a problem in time.
And Jim, the sheriff, has been advocating for more jail space, and ultimately that will probably be the outcome.
Well, it's up to the voters. And It's interesting because the sheriff's office since I've been in charge, is currently the only agency in the county that does still do DARE in the schools and things like that. And Jim's actually right.
Which is the drug education program.
Right, drug. And we do need to get a hold of these kids at earlier ages, and I go out and I teach drug classes and so on as far as identification and so on.
So what I wanted to do was, thank you. What I wanted to do was ask you about the jail space. Would you, as sheriff, advocate a new jail for expansion of a jail, or new jail, or expansion of the current jail?
Well, I think in time I would advocate a new jail. I think that we also have some options available to us right now that we could put into use.
For example?
Well, one of the top topics has been this transition center, and I know that the Sheriff Bergen and I kind of had a disagreement on this over the years, or over the time, but I think that can be relooked at, and we do have availability of jail space within this transition center. Obviously, it would take manpower to run it. It would take some doing to get it back online, but I think that we have some options to use there. We obviously have the jail facility that can, I believe 60 beds is what he says that we have right now. That would add more beds over at the transition center, which we could maybe do a couple different options with that setting. So there can be at least a slight increase. I don't think that we're ever going to solve that problem until we really get a new large jail in this county, but under the current financial conditions, I don't think that's going to happen.
And the transition center is where, and would you use that?
Absolutely not. That transition center is in the Warrenton area. It was not designed to be a jail, and also you're bifurcating your workforce, which is adding up well over $1 million a year, running 2 different corrections divisions, and you're also separating your workforce, which is just not logistically sound business practice. It's also very expensive, and then that building would have to be completely retroed into a jail, which is another several $1 million. And with the $13 million jail expansion to almost 200 beds, that would have kept our community well in touch at the current facility for almost 50 years.
So you both agree that expansion or a new jail is ultimately going to have to happen to really solve some of this, or to lead to some of the solutions here. The other question that I want to ask you is, what are people telling you that they want in the county when it comes to sheriff services?
Well, we do 4 meetings a year out in the public, and that's been going on since I've been sheriff for the last 7.5 years. During the summer, we do take a little bit of a break, but we also put on ATV classes for kids. We put on marine safety training in the schools. We do all kinds of different things, and anybody that calls, my home number, my cell number, will get whatever they need, and that's what the kind of sheriff's office we've given to the people for the last 7-8 years.
But in those meetings that you hold, those 4 meetings a year, what do people tell you? You want to step a little bit closer this way. What do people tell you now that they want for county sheriff services?
Well, they continue to agree with a lot of the services that we're already providing. They like the DARE, they like the ATV classes, and they like the way we patrol. That we've always done everything as best we can, and with the resources that we have. And in our strategic plan, we point out all the different things that we do and how we provide services to the public.
Okay, now Jim, you had talked about the patrols as one of the key elements of your campaign when you first got into all this. Where do we stand with that? Are you still advocating additional patrols?
Well, I'm not so sure that I ever advocated additional patrols. I was just more advocating the patrols that are currently available to expand further out into far reaches of the county. And I still think that holds true. In part of my campaign, when I'm going out doing door-to-door contacts and so forth, I'm still hearing that as pretty much the number one complaint that at least individuals are perceiving themselves, that they're not seeing any deputies patrolling their area. And again, that's a perception that they have, but that is the number one thing that I'm hearing as I'm going through the county.
So if you were the sheriff, you would then try to move more patrols out into the rural areas?
Correct.
Okay, now, so let's go back to the main question, is how many patrols do we have in the county?
Well, I have 2 resident deputies that patrol the east end of the county, like Napa, Swenson, Westport, Taylorville. They live out there, and they do patrol, and they are out there full time. They don't go anywhere else. And then I have one in the Jewel, Elsie area, and he patrols out there and lives in that community as well. And they do as many hours as they can, and also additionally in overtime. When we do these meetings, I have not heard those kind of issues, nor have we had too many complaints regarding, yes, there are times when we've had to substitute individuals and so on, but I've got 1 detective where we should have 2. We had to reduce that because of monetary issues. And then
how many people do you have on the force? How many deputies right now?
A total of about 80 employees, but that includes, parole and probation, corrections officers, patrol officers, nurses, administration, and so on.
How many deputies?
18 to 20 on the road, but actually only about 13 actually on the road.
24/7?
24/7, which is another huge issue to deal with just in scheduling and so on. But we get it done, and whether I or my chief deputy have to go out and patrol some odd hours, we do it as well.
Being sheriff requires you to manage divisions and several individuals, like the 80 people you talked about. If you were the sheriff, would you change the management style, and in what way?
Well, I think you have to take a look at everything that's going on within the office first. Obviously, I've been advocating a change. That's been part of my campaign, and so there very well could be some changes done on the inside. However, I want to take a really positive look at what's going on inside the office, and if changes need to be made to increase services, then we do it, or to increase work ethics, or not work ethics, but work product, then we do it. Right now, I mean, it stands as it is, and we just have to take a look at it when we get in there.
So you would wait to take a good look before you made any major change. You don't have anything agended right now.
Absolutely. I don't think that's a prudent way to do it. You need to take a look to see what's working, what's not working before you can do any type of change.
What's the management background that you bring to the office as a senior trooper?
Well, I've never been an actual, I'm sorry, I should retract that. I have been a sergeant, second command of Warrenton Police Department when I was with that agency. With the state police, I have not been an actual supervisor as a sergeant or a lieutenant or anything like that, but I do run and help run and lead our collision reconstruction unit, which is 43 people. Outside of the departments, outside of police work, I do leadership in actually multiple different areas, through community services, through the schools, and through our church organizations, which I'm a director of a couple different things there and do a lot of leadership. So I bring in some of those leadership styles from there. Plus, I bring in the fact that I've been tendered for at least the last 24, 25 years with the Oregon State Police, and I bring in that kind of a work ethic.
And you've been sheriff for how long?
7.5 years, almost 8 years now, and started out as a patrol and sergeant, and then detective sergeant, and then under sheriff, and then the sheriff as elected. But and I hold all the certifications that middle management and executive leadership and so on, which is something that you just don't go and get within a week or two after becoming sheriff. That's something that I've been working on and have had for over 10, 12 years now. So
how important is it to you gentlemen to build and maintain trusting community relationships outside of the office of being a manager and a director of the personnel?
Oh, it's imperative. Relationships are primary and everything else is secondary. And when I teach at command college, that's one of the things that we teach. Relationships are primary, and we'll continue to do that, and not only with the public, but with our fellow law enforcement people as well.
And what about the partnership idea with you? Is that something you'd like to pursue as well?
It has to be. It has to be. Anytime that whether you're in law enforcement or outside of law enforcement, in the community of our size, everybody needs to work together closely. And so, partnerships and getting along with organizations, businesses, other agencies, citizens, it has to be. It's an imperative piece in and outside of law enforcement.
I have a lot of other questions that I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask each other a question. First off, Jim, what would you ask the sheriff if you could do so and you have that ability to do right now?
I'm not so sure that I really have any questions for him right at this moment. A lot of people have questions for us.
Want to think about it?
I'd have to think about it, yeah.
And would you have a question for Jim?
I think Jim is a great guy. He's a nice person, but I don't think has really considered how much work and preparation goes into this office. And with that said, I would just ask him, what have you really done to prepare yourself to become sheriff over the last 25 years of law enforcement?
Well, obviously, I built a lot of relationships. That's a big piece of the puzzle. Learning the laws all through the years, learning how to deal with people under multiple different facets of the way our society builds them. Through the leadership that I've had the ability to be part of, I've been building myself up in leadership programs, and I've had great supervisors that have seen leadership abilities in me, and have literally asked if I would go up for supervision in our department, and I've turned them down on multiple occasions because of the way our department or the state police works with their supervisory issues. Not to say that's bad, it's just I've turned them down, and they still have helped me build my career up as a leader. And so I've done that for the last, now 35 years, because I'm going on my 35th year in law enforcement.
And what is it that you think the best thing that you would bring as the sheriff to the office?
Well, I just bring a positive impact, probably a different look at things. Obviously Sheriff Bergen's been there a long time. He's been part of the sheriff's office a long time. And sometimes it's just nice to have a change of view, a change of perspective on things. So I bring that there. I bring a totally probably different thought product in because of the way I've been raised. And so I think that it's just a big positive image is what I like to bring in.
And would you have a question now for the sheriff?
Now, I've worked with Tom for a long time, and I trust in him. We've been friends and worked together on cases. And good conditions. I'm not sure I have a lot of questions for you. I think he's.
I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
No.
I guess the last question I had for you, Sheriff, would be then, what is it that you can bring to the department in the next 4 years, 5 years, 10 years that will improve the conditions in the county?
Well, we're going to continue to do what we do. We have a strategic plan that we put in place every 5 years. That will be updated here in the next 2 months. We've been working on, and it's just relationships again with legislatures. It's how we get bills passed, and it's knowing how Salem works, and it's continuing to listen to the public by having public meetings and going out and saying, what is it that you want? What is it that we can do for you, and how can we do it better? We just had we help with the Citizens Academy down here in Seaside and with Astoria Police Department. The Sheriff's Office is heavily involved with that. We just put a Citizens Watch group together out in the Swenson area, and we've done those in Hammond and Taylorville and so on. So we'll continue to do those, and when the people call us up, we respond, and that's what we're here for.
Would you two entertain the idea between now and the November election of a debate at all, or debates? Has anyone approached you at all about that?
I think we have one kind of October 10th or 11th up in Astoria. And but yeah, I think we're both very civil people, and we're not going to go after each other like a bunch of dogs in a in a corn patch or something. Jim's a decent human being, and we've, like he said earlier, we've worked together, and we'll just continue to move forward and try to do what's best for our community.
Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to add at all?
No.
Okay, that's all we have.
Thank
That's
you.
very good. Thank you very much for joining us.